Hello and welcome to the second 2020 NHL Draft recap here at Scouching. Today we're going to be looking at the crop that came from the Nashville Predators. Now, the Nashville Predators were a team that I thought might draft Yaroslav Askarov, but I didn't expect it. Yet lo and behold, there they were going up and drafting hopefully their goalie of the future. Now, I am definitely part of the group of people that say do not draft goalies in the first round. But while I might not be a goaltending expert, I get the feeling that I know a good young goaltender when I see one, and Yaroslav Askarov is an example of that. I've seen Askarov play for 2 seasons now, and every single time I have seen him outside of the World Junior Championship this year, I've been thoroughly impressed. He's technical, he's athletic. Even when he's caught out of position, he never really seems out of control of what's going on when he's on the ice. He can make complicated situations look easy for a goaltender. I saw him stop multiple cross-ice one-timers from Jack Hughes to Cole Caulfield at the under-18s last year. And this year in the KHL, he has been standing on his head doing a great job for SKA St. Petersburg whenever they've been able to play. So while goaltenders are a bit of a wild card, I think when you look at who was available at the 12th overall pick and what the Nashville Predators are kind of looking for in the draft and what they're looking for in their pipeline, I think it's a perfectly reasonable swing to take. I think Askarov has a chance to be a #1 goaltender for many, many years, and even if you strike out at 11th overall and he's nothing more than a serviceable backup in the NHL, I think it's worth the gamble in this range of the draft. So I give the Nashville Predators props for taking a risk on the goalie here, and I think he might turn out to be a really, really good player for this team. But at 42, I felt that the Nashville Predators made a little bit of a reach on Evangelista. I've seen him play a little bit, and I really like his slippery skill and his offensive ability. But I think things start to fall apart a little bit in the defensive side of the puck and with his skating and overall pace to the game. I think he's going to be a great junior level player, and I'm sure that he could develop into something a little bit better if he fills out his frame and gets a bit stronger, and also can get more efficient in his skating and generate speed a little bit better. But this is a situation where I felt that there were some really good players left on the board for the Nashville Predators in this range. So while I like Evangelista, I just felt that he was picked a little bit high. But if you're betting on his slippery skill and creativity, I don't see how that's really a bad bet. So it'll be interesting to see how his development and his career go, especially when you consider that there were names like Teddy Niederbach, Emil Heinemann, and Jan Mysak, just to name a few that were left on the board that the Nashville Predators passed on. At 73, again, the Nashville Predators made a little bit of a reach to get Luke Prokop. Now, Luke Prokop is a player that I didn't track, but I did see play quite a bit with the Calgary Hitmen this year. And I think he's a perfectly reasonable, fundamentally strong, offensive-leaning defenseman. He's big, he can skate pretty well, he likes to shoot from the point, but his defensive metrics that I have in my data sheet weren't particularly promising. But I feel like with a big player who can skate like Prokop does and has the offensive potential he does, it's a perfectly reasonable pick to make somewhere in the NHL draft. But again, I felt there were some very interesting players still left on the board. When you look at the names that went directly after Prokop, like Samuel Knazko, Ty Smilanich, and Jean-Luc Foudy and Danny Gushchin, I thought there were some really interesting projects there for them to take. So Prokop might be a bit more of a project than I would be interested in, especially that high in the draft. But again, he's a big right-handed defenseman who can skate well. Then at 101st, they drafted another defenseman in Adam Wilsby. Adam Wilsby is a person who in the data-centric world of Twitter has really been making waves considering how much of a producer he was at the Allsvenskan this year. Now, I really did my best to watch as much of Adam Wilsby as I could really tolerate. I think he's a shifty, offensive-leaning defenseman, but I think people underestimate how much of a step down the Allsvenskan is from the SHL. He really likes to open up ice from the blue line and shoot from the point and generate his production that way. I found him decently mobile, but for a 20-year-old defenseman, nothing that particularly screams NHL draft steal. But the Nashville Predators are certainly not afraid of taking flyers on really raw defensemen and trying to turn them into something better. I don't really see an enormously positive impact player in Wilsby down the road, and he is further along in his development already, but the Nashville Predators seem to know how to draft and develop defensemen, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. And at 166, again, they drafted another defenseman, but frankly, this was a defenseman that I absolutely would have looked at more with the Adam Wilsby pick in Luke Reid of the Chicago Steel. Luke Reid really gives me similar feelings as David Ference did when he was draft eligible and then drafted by the Nashville Predators. And David Ference has turned into quite a young defenseman. And while Luke Reid is older than David Ference was when Ference was draft eligible, I really like Luke Reid's really raw skating and skill combination. He's not the most flashy offensive player. I don't really find him as the most reliable defensive player either, but you're betting on his raw tools. And in this area of the draft, Reid should really have been off the board already. He's really raw, but if you give him a few years in college to fill out his frame and work on his ability to use his mobility and skill in conjunction to open up the ice and potentially push offense a little bit better, they could have a really interesting player here, especially for a player where he went in the draft. Sticking with the Chicago Steel, the Nashville Predators then drafted Gunnerwolf Fontaine at 202. Probably the best name in the draft for starters, but Gunnerwolf Fontaine is a player that I've really been impressed with the Chicago Steel. He's a bit small, but he's rambunctious, he plays hard, and he's got some skill. I didn't have him ranked, and I just don't think that for a player that was undrafted last year, as a D+1 in the USHL, he didn't really blow me away from what I've seen. He does have the potential to fight and battle hard and win puck battles and drive offense really well, so it'll be interesting to see where his game goes from here. He's a player that did have NHL interest last year, and I'm glad to see him get picked after getting undrafted last year. And then at 209, the Nashville Predators drafted Chase McLean, a player who I would colloquially refer to as a guy. Now, he's only 5 months older than Gunnerwolf Fontaine, so it makes him the second 2000-born USHL player the Nashville Predators drafted. I tried to go back and watch as much Chase McLean as I could since the draft just to see what he's all about, and I mean, he's big, he's a center, he has some decent skill, he can push to the front of the net, so I guess we'll see what happens. But I don't really have tremendous expectations out of Chase McLean, and I don't really see him as high level of a player as someone like a Gunnerwolf Fontaine. He only played 18 games this year, and he is going to a good program in Penn State, but this is a player who, in all the tape I've seen since the draft, didn't really scream 7th round steal to me, so we'll have to see what happens in the coming years. So for the Nashville Predators overall, I'm giving them a 2B. I'm a really strong believer in Yaroslav Askarov, but it is impossible to deny that that is a risky pick at 11th overall. I think it's a reasonable gamble to make, and I really do believe in Askarov, but if he doesn't work out and the players that went immediately after him in the draft do work out, that might be a foundational player that the Nashville Predators missed out on. But if Askarov works out, he makes his coach's life and his GM's life much, much easier. And when you look at the rest of their draft, I find it's a bit of a mixed bag overall, but I think that Evangelista could be a player one day. I think with time, Luke Reid could become a serviceable defenseman. And if Luke Prokop shores up his defensive game a little bit and can get stronger on his feet, there could be an interesting right-handed defenseman there as well. So overall, I felt it was a pretty even crop with regards to their talent level, with some good potential with Yaroslav Askarov at the top end. So that's it for the Nashville Predators. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you can click all the buttons you see below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could subscribe here on YouTube or on Patreon, where you get access to a Discord server, data sheets for hundreds of drafted and undrafted prospects, as well as exclusive data visualizations and plenty of other goodies. Or you can pick up some merchandise from the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of all profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that's all, and we'll see you in the next one, where we profile the Columbus Blue Jackets.